In this episode, we talk with Dan Burden about walkable communities. Then we head up to Boston for the annual meeting of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We drop by Walking Magazine to find out why walking has become so popular. We learn about Walk Boston, a local advocacy group, and America Walks, a national network of local groups. Finally, we look at actuated pedestrian signals. Stay tuned. We're talking with Dan Burden of Walkable Communities Incorporated. What is Walkable Communities?
Walkable Communities is a small two-person nonprofit corporation set up to help promote walking throughout America, but to create a new environment for walking so that people can add walking back into their lifestyles. It means added planning, better neighborhood design, improved neighborhoods, retrofitting neighborhoods, improving major Main Street areas, or redeveloping the public realm into delightful places for people to go and spend time, and more security, a sense of welcome, comfort, and feeling for how we design streets both today and how we go back and retrofit them to make them real places for real people again.
A lot of people, they think, well, you want to fix things for pedestrians, you just need to stick in a sidewalk, and sidewalks are important, but there's more to it than just that.
A lot more. In fact, we do need the sidewalks, and we do need ways for people to cross streets. Those are absolutely vital. But the things that are being left out right now are the kind of ambiance you see behind us, where a person has shade and comfort. The pedestrian, actually, like any other mode, any other user, has to have security. If security isn't there, they won't come and they won't use the space. And also, it not only has to be real security, it has to feel secure. And if it just doesn't feel right, people won't come. Then we have to add in the efficiencies, where walking actually is competing with all the other modes, where once you park your car, the sidewalk systems are contiguous, so that you have all the incentives to walk and not go back to the car. It has to have all the conveniences of being stores being placed together in the right kinds of packages, the way we do in a mall. We've forgotten how to do that in our towns, and so we need to get back to town planning principles. In addition to the safety, the security, the convenience, and the efficiency, the person has to feel comfortable in the space, and that's where we get into all the ambiance of place, the right textures of the walkways, the green, the added creature comforts that, like 1,000 points of detail per block for the pedestrian to find the streets interesting, worth walking up and down a lot. And then finally, to really feel welcome, like people want people to walk and not put all the strength into the other modes, but to allow walking to compete with what other choices people have.
And if someone has decided, okay, we like walkable communities, I want to help change my neighborhood, change my town, my city, what's the most important thing to do?
Well, the most important thing is you have to have a collective of people that are willing to bring the change. And every town I've ever been to in America that's becoming walkable or is in the late stages of arriving, it's always been a small nucleus of people that came together, sometimes inspired by a retired person, a member of the family that has a little bit of extra time that can devote to it, often a staff person from a city or a politician. But somewhere there's got to be that spark plug, the person who really is willing to bring a nice small collaboration of people together, good technical people who are movers and shakers in the community, who will then stick with it for the long term and build real towns. Over time, change out the town code so that you put in the right types of land use, so that you begin to accentuate crosswalks, make the easy changes first so people see the physical change, and then start to work on detail after detail. Places like Portland, which are now immensely walkable. 20 years ago, you wouldn't have given a hope.
What are the roles of the different layers of government in getting change for pedestrians?
Yeah, well, the role, if you start at the what's considered the top, the national level, we need our national organizations, not only the federal government, but the national associations like the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the American Planning Association, yes, the Federal Highway Administration, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, all have big roles to play. But the role they play is setting the stage, making it possible for others to follow good guidelines, to perhaps collect the case examples and to share them, distribute them so that people can increase their hope that they can bring change. States likewise can and should bring change, but again, they need to set the guidelines through their state associations, regional organizations, the metropolitan planning organizations. The real change not only comes at the local level, it comes at the neighborhood level. And what we find is a very progressive town, and I'll just pick one as an example, Crested Butte, Colorado, small town, 1,600 population. It's just so joyful to walk there because everybody seems to be focused on the issue and they're bringing the change in their community. And if it's a larger community, and let's just say, for example, Chicago, then we see the change occurring in each suburban area or different blocks or different corridors like Broadway in Chicago, something like that. And so when we say local, we mean local. That's where you really bring the change.
We're talking with Dennis Christensen, who's the immediate past president of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. What is a transportation engineer?
Well, the transportation engineering profession was established to address primarily the problems of urban congestion and urban traffic safety.
And how would a traffic engineer differ from a transportation planner, let's say?
Well, the traffic engineer developed as an individual with an engineering background who was developing standards, criteria to actually design roads. The planning profession was more involved in the where would you locate facilities, the engineers more in the how would they be designed and operated. Over the years, they've all come together, and ITE is really an umbrella organization for both planners and engineers.
And how do transportation engineers work with, let's say, elected officials or members of the public who are going to have to interact with you a lot to determine how our infrastructure is built?
Well, there's a very well-established programs and policies to follow in developing projects. There's a required public involvement process. And of course, the elected and appointed officials are the ones who set the policies and the funding levels under which we work. So we report to them on a regular basis with needs, and our job is primarily to identify what are the alternatives and the consequences of those alternatives, and the elected and appointed officials will make the decisions on what to actually do.
What do you see as the greatest challenges for transportation engineers over the next decade?
Well, the safety is becoming a much more major problem. The downward trend in fatalities is beginning to change. But perhaps the biggest problem is that travel demand continues to grow at 2 to 3% per year, and our ability to build new facilities or operate facilities better will make it a real challenge as to how you accommodate that demand 10, 20 years out in the future.
We're talking with Mark Fenton, who's editor-at-large for Walking Magazine. Why has walking become so popular?
Well, John, there's actually a huge resurgence in the awareness of health and fitness in this country, but especially health, and walking is leading the charge. The medical community has recognized that you can walk and gain great benefits as far as cardiovascular health, reduction in risk for osteoporosis, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol levels, and all of those benefits can be gained with a regular walking program and without the risk of higher impact activities, you know, the injury risk that goes with things like running and so on. So all that medical news is now out there, and it's very well established scientific fact.
So we don't have to run marathons to gain the benefits of exercise?
That's right. In fact, what we found, the research, and it was codified in the Surgeon General's report on physical activity last year, essentially said consistency is most important, and they set a bottom line minimum of about 30 minutes of physical activity a day. And if you get that on a daily basis, something like a brisk walk, 30 minutes a day, can proffer the benefits we were just talking about.
What sort of obstacles are there to keep people from walking more?
Well, certainly people list all the barriers to exercise. I don't have enough time in my day, and I don't, I've got to get the kids to the store, and I've got to drop so-and-so, or get the kids to school. I've got to go to the store, drop somebody off at soccer. The lifestyle today is certainly an issue. But in reality, some of the research indicates that the physical barriers are substantial, too. A lot of people say, I don't feel I live in a neighborhood where I can walk, or the city is not conducive to it. We're too far from anything to walk to anyway. There's some interesting research going on at the Cooper Clinic right now that suggests lifestyle changes may be the best way to encourage people to engage in physical activity. That is, don't tell them you've got to go to the gym to work out, but tell them to find a way to incorporate a walk in their daily life. So, can you make a walk a part of your daily commute? Can you get off the subway 2 stops earlier, get off, walk a few stops to the subway before you take it? Can you make that errand on foot rather than in the car, just going to the corner store for milk and so on? Now, the more the physical environment encourages that, the more likely that is to happen. So we've got to deal with the public health issue here, getting people to walk because it is good for them, but also the physical and environmental issues of giving them an environment that encourages that so that they can make the decision to incorporate that physical activity on a daily basis without having it be a real project.
And what sort of obstacles are we talking about here?
Oh, it's literally right down to the most mundane things, like crosswalks are unfriendly, and I don't feel I can get across the street to that store where I would pick up the gallon of milk on a regular basis if I could just get there. Sidewalks aren't wide enough or don't exist at all, so that I don't feel that there's a place for me to walk safely. Particularly when we talk about children, this is the case. When we hear, why don't you let your kids walk to school, or why don't you walk with them, there's physically no place to do it that I feel the kid would be able to do it safely. If there isn't a sidewalk, or if they're very narrow or poorly maintained, not maintained in the winter. That's what you hear often in the northeast. Those are the kinds of things. Obviously, with the elderly, you hear about the timing cycles on lights, simple things like, I don't believe I have enough time to get across the street. And on the one hand, those sound like almost trivial or very mundane issues, but on the other, if they keep a person from regular physical activity, they're truly tragic.
And Walking Magazine, I'm sure you hear a lot from your readers. When they ask, what can I do, what do you tell them?
First and foremost, we say you've got to be a role model. So you can change, and many people talk about feeling unsafe in their community. The act of being out there and walking enhances the feeling of safety. The more people walking in an environment we know, the more people feel safe. So if you're out there on foot, you're encouraging others to come out and join you. That's number one. Number two, do things in your immediate area that you're allowed to do on your own. Can you take a trash bag on your walk once a week and actually pick up some of the junk that might make it an unaesthetic place to walk? So if previously people didn't walk there just because they felt it was dirty and unpleasant, the act of cleaning up a little or organizing a block cleanup can make a huge difference. Is there brush on your property that obscures views of oncoming traffic so that it's unsafe for people to walk or cross there? You can cut back that brush without talking to anybody if it's on your property. And conceivably, if you go to the town, if you know that there's an intersection where the same is the case, you can get them to do that without a lot of difficulty. You go to the next level, things do become more difficult. Asking somebody to paint a crosswalk or put in a crossing signal for the pedestrian, those do start to cost money. But if you, the pedestrian, speak up, you can make a difference. Many people don't realize that unless your town planners or Department of Public Works know that there's an issue, they may never do anything, not because they don't want to, but because they don't know that people are trying to cross at a certain intersection or a location. And finally, get involved and speak up, not just on a case-by-case basis, I want a crosswalk here, I want a stoplight there, but in a more general sense, you should be writing to Congress about iced tea. We've written about the iced tea legislation, or now called Next Tea. You should speak up when there's a development coming into your community. Now, you can show up at the town planning meeting and be the person that raises their hand and says, I see that the developer doesn't have any plans for sidewalks. Is there a reason for that? And you can be, the mere act of being there and being a voice in favor of the construction of sidewalks can be what swings it over so that the planners say, yeah, let's make that one of the mandatory requirements for this development. So it goes from what you do right in front of your house, like shoveling the walk in the winter, right on down to writing to Congress and everything in between.
We're talking with Ann Hirschfang, one of the founders of Walk Boston. What is Walk Boston?
Walk Boston is a group of ordinary citizens, including some professional and technical people, who founded itself about 8 years ago to advocate for better pedestrian environments in the metropolitan area around Boston and in Boston and its cities.
Now, what sort of background do you have in transportation that you get involved in something like that?
I actually have quite a long and varied background. I was on the board of our Port Authority for 7 years, and then I was the state of Massachusetts Undersecretary of Transportation, and now I'm on the board of our Turnpike Authority doing heavy road projects, and so this is a new departure for me.
I would think so. How did you get interested in pedestrians?
I walk a lot, and about 10 years ago I was part of a community group that designed this beautiful southwest corridor that we're standing in. It's above a transit line, and we designed this 5-mile, along with the professionals of course, this 5-mile walking and gardening and beautiful place, and that made me think that every place to walk in the area should be as nice as this. So I got together with 3 other people and we founded Walk Boston.
And your efforts now go beyond Boston because you have another organization.
Yes, Walk Boston, Philly Walks, the Willamette Pedestrian Coalition in Portland, Walk Austin, Walk New York, a group in Seattle, a group in Atlanta, have founded a nationwide coalition of pedestrian advocacy groups. And we believe nationwide, as each of us does locally, that you need people to talk up about walking. You need people to make clear to the politicians, the designers, everybody how important walking is. I don't know if you know, but nationwide, walking is the second highest transportation mode in the country. And people who walk make choices about where they walk. They walk on one side of the street or the other side of the street based on how pleasant it is, and they make those choices, but they aren't conscious that they're making them. What we want to do is make all of those walkers, and basically it's 100% of the people who walk as part of their trip, aware that they deserve a good sidewalk, a wide sidewalk, trees, pleasant places to walk along, crosswalks that are safe, traffic signals that tell them walk so that they can be convenient and safe. We want to make everybody in the country aware that they're entitled to those things, and we want them to make all of the politicians aware of that. So part of what we do is advocacy, a very strong part, and organization. A second part of what we do in this region, what Walk Boston does and what each of these local groups does, is keep track of projects that are coming up that their city or their town or the state is doing, and we then go to the designers and we say, these are the way you design a good pedestrian environment, and we work with them and we dialogue with them and we insist that they make the sidewalks wide enough to be pleasant for people to walk on. So we are concerned both with raising people's general consciousness about how many people walk and how walkers are entitled to a decent place to walk, to raise the decision makers' consciousness, and to actually get involved at the design level with the changes that need to happen. We have, in this region, Walk Boston has gone around to a lot of neighborhood groups, and we can sometimes be helpful to, let's say, the city in that we can go to neighborhood groups and say, if you want a safe place to walk, this is how you design it, the details that I mentioned before. And that sometimes helps the city if they want to do that, because people need educating, really, as to what makes a good walking environment. You know it when you see it at the end, whether it's good or not, but you don't necessarily know when you're sitting down talking to a traffic engineer what the details are that will make it work. And we help fill that in, both for the designers and engineers and for the ordinary citizens.
So what are you calling this national coalition?
We call it America Walks, and our goal is to make everybody in the country, in every city and town and rural area, aware that they're entitled to walk safely and comfortably wherever they want to go, and to get them to talk to their politicians and their leaders, and to get them to, when a main street, for instance, when the highway department comes through and says they're going to widen the main streets, We want those people to come and say, no, you don't. Wide sidewalks are good economically for the stores. They're good for people to get around. They mean that people don't have to buy a second car. They save money. They're good for the environment, obviously. They're good for children who can get around independently. You leave those sidewalks. Why don't you widen those sidewalks? Make the intersection safer. Put bulb outs at the intersection so people can cross more safely. Make sure the cars have to stop. Make sure it's clear where they have to stop. We want everybody out there thinking about what they need to walk comfortably.
And is someone in a city that didn't have one of your member organizations wanted to get something started, can they go to advice to the existing organizations?
Yes, they should get in touch with America Walks, and our address is 156 Milk Street, Boston, 02109, and we will send information about how to start your own group, and we will be happy to be in touch about the details of how to do it.
We're talking with Dorothea Haas, who's one of the founders of Walk Boston. How long has Walk Boston been around?
Well, Walk Boston was formed in 1990. We're about 7 years old.
And what have you managed to accomplish in that time?
Well, I think that we've put walking into the transportation vocabulary, so to speak. Walking's become very popular, walking for fitness, walking for causes, walking for the environment. But I think the really important thing is we've begun to make a change right here on the streets and sidewalks of Boston.
And are there any particular places where you've had a big impact?
Well, on many of the streets that are in our downtown, there have been various proposals to widen them, and we've persuaded the city through a lot of very active advocacy not to widen those streets. We've been able to have neck downs put in. We've been able to even change the signal system to have more walk put in the light cycle at various intersections.
Now, what's bad for pedestrians about wide streets?
Well, one of the problems with wide streets, probably the number one problem, is that when cars are in wide streets, they move fast, and that's the biggest problem for pedestrian safety. If a car hits you when it's going 50 miles an hour, you're probably not going to live to tell about it, but if you're hit going 30 miles an hour, you're probably going to survive that hit. So we like to slow down traffic, and by narrowing the street, what you're actually doing is you're changing what the driver can see as he or she drives. If you're driving on a wide street, mostly what you see in this cone of vision are other drivers. You're jockeying for positions, moving in and out, making sure you've got enough space. But when the street is narrower, you look around, what you see in your peripheral vision are you see parked cars, sidewalks, walkers, and immediately you begin to slow up, recognizing you're in an urban environment and you're not just relating to automobiles.
And where are we here? What's the problem we're looking at here?
Right now, this is one of the most important locations in downtown Boston. This might be what some people call a 100% urban space. This is an intersection which actually divides the heart of downtown from a major transportation center, South Boston Station. At South Boston Station, 14,000 passengers move in and out of the station on a daily basis to bus, commuter rail, even to Amtrak service. And what happens is the walkers get caught. These are extremely wide streets, wider than they need to be. Many of them are 4 lanes moving in one direction. Traffic goes quickly. There isn't enough time to walk the street. We're not given enough sufficient number of seconds of walk time. This is something that we've addressed with the city. This also is a very high pedestrian accident location. This is a high pedestrian accident location.
And narrowing streets would be the main thing you'd want to see done here? Or?
We would like to narrow streets. I think that we'd also like to have a clearer pathway actually to the transportation terminal. It's clear where the transportation terminal is. This is the historic South Boston terminal, which was renovated about 15 years ago. It's a very popular destination. It's something the city is very proud of. And I think we should just make it much easier for people to use the station, including visitors who are coming to visit Boston and aren't accustomed to the way in which we move and drive in the area, which can be a little bit like the Wild West at times.
And what sort of changes are you working on elsewhere in the city at the moment?
One of our major thrusts has been to try and improve access to many of the commuter rail, subway, and bus stop locations in the city. We're working with the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority to develop a prototypical bus stop. We're also trying to provide better signage, improved walking conditions to the major transportation terminals. In downtown Boston, this area that we're in now, which is the financial and the retail heart of the city, most people don't drive. Most people move in and out of the city, about 3/4, on foot or on our transit system, which is an extremely high rate for U.S. City. So we're very successful in that, and actually walking and transit are more important to downtown than moving cars. And we're working with the city and the state to begin to press them a little bit to try and create a more balanced transportation system.
Some intersections have actuated signals, where a pedestrian needs to press a button in order to get the walk signal. Sometimes the delay can be considerable. Here in the city of Fairfax, Virginia, they have a little sign warning you it could take up to 2 1/3 minutes before you get the walk signal. Kind of wonder why they don't put in a bench with a magazine rack to help you pass the time. But even with a much shorter wait, after half a minute, the pedestrian might wonder, did the button work? We saw a rather nice solution to that on a signal up near Montreal. When you press the button, a little light came on to let you know that it had indeed worked. When you have a really broad intersection, you might wonder, how much time do you have left to get to the far side once that don't walk sign starts flashing? They had a solution for that as well. Had a countdown clock giving you the number of seconds remaining until the cross traffic resumed. A couple of simple little features that can make life a lot more pleasant for pedestrians.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.